Lesson 1.4 is on rewriting equations and formulas. And when we go through this, you are going to write down an equation and solve it for the given variable. So let's take a look at the first activity that we did. And with this activity, it told us that we had to write a formula for the perimeter P of a rectangle. So in order to find perimeter, we would have P equals, we have to add up all of the sides, so we would have 2L, 2 times the length, plus we would have 2 times the width. That's how we find the perimeter, because we're adding up all of the sides. The next step tells us to solve the formula for W. So what we want to do is we want to get that W by itself. We go to the side that contains our W, and we see that connected to our W is a plus 2L. That's the first thing that we're going to undo, is that plus 2L, and we're going to undo it by subtracting 2L from both sides. Since we can't combine the P and the 2L, we leave that separate, so I'm going to write P minus 2L equals, and on the right hand side all we have left is 2W. Now in order to get that W by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 2. So our formula now is P minus 2L equals, or divided by 2 equals W. So we solved that equation for W. Now it says use the new formula to find the width of the rectangle. So I'm going to take the information that was given to us in this and solve. So instead of the P, I'm going to put in 19 because that's what they told us, minus 2 times L, and you'll notice they tell us that L is 5.5, and then we're going to divide all of that by 2. So we have 19 minus 2 times 5.5 would give us 11 all over 2. Well, 19 minus 11 gives us 8, and 8 divided by 2 gives us 4. So if I came up here where my W is and put in a 4, I need to put 4 inches. So if we were to plug in on every side the 4 inches and the 5.5, the 5.5 plus the 5.5 give us 11, and the 4 and the 4 give us 8, and 11 plus 8 does give us the 19. So you can go back and check over your work to see that you have the correct answer. So let's move on to the next one. On this one, we have to remember the formula for area of a triangle. So area of a triangle, A, equals base times the height divided by 2. If we want to solve this formula for H, like they tell us to, the first thing that we have to undo is divide by 2. So I'm going to undo dividing by 2 by multiplying both sides by 2. So on the right hand side it cancels off, and we're left with 2A equals B times H. Well, now we want to undo that times B, so we're going to divide by B. And we are left with 2A divided by B equals H. So we plug in what we know to find the height of the triangle. So we would do 2 times 10 inches squared, because that's what they tell us A is over here. And then we divide by 5/2. I like to change this 5/2 or 5 over 2 to 2.5 because it makes things a little bit easier. So I'm going to put it as 2.5. And what that gives us is 20 divided by 2.5. And if you calculate that out, you end up getting 8. So our height is going to be 8 inches. If we move to the next one, we notice that now we're dealing with circumference of a circle. Circumference of a circle has 2 equations. You could either say circumference equals pi times the diameter, or if you wanted to use radius instead of diameter, you would say circumference equals 2 times pi times r. And the reason we say that is because d is the same thing as 2 times r. And so you'll notice that that right equation has, in addition to the pi, the 2r, which is the same as d. In this case, since we want to use the radius, we're going to choose to use the second equation. and we want to solve this equation for r. So c equals 2 times pi times r. Since everything on the right-hand side that's connected to our r is connected by multiplication, we undo that using division. So I'm going to divide by 2 pi on both sides, because that's what I want to get away from my r. These cancel off, and I'm left with r equals c divided by 2 pi. So I'm going to plug in the given information. They tell us that c equals 8 pi. So 8 pi divided by 2 pi should give us r. Well, the pi's cancel off because pi over pi is 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. So our radius is going to be 4, and our label would be centimeters. When we came down to the next shape, we had to come up with the formula for the area of the trapezoid. And so when we were doing that, we split this up into two shapes. So we made this a length of 2 because this was a length of 4, and the whole thing they told us was 6. So we found the area of the rectangle, which was a 4 by h. So the area of the rectangle was 4 times h, which gave us 4h, plus we had to add in the area of the triangle, and the area of the triangle is base times height, which we don't know, divided by 2, and they tell us that that area equals 15. Well, when I reduce this 2 times h divided by 2, I get 2h over 2, which reduces down to just 1h. So we have 4h plus 1h equaling 15. That gives us 5h's equaling 15. We have to divide both sides by 5 in order to get the h by itself, and h equals 3 inches. On the last one, we have the formula for area of a parallelogram, which is A equals base times height. So when I take this formula and I solve for h, I have to divide both sides by b. So I get A over b equals h. And I'm going to use the given information to solve for h. So A is 56, b is 8, and we want to find what h would equal. 56 over 8 equals 7, and we have our label of meters. So we're going to go to the next page to get a couple more practice problems. For this one, we had to use volume of a prism. So we had V equals the area of the base times the height. So we want to solve this for h. What I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by b to get that h by itself. So we have V divided by the area of the base to get height, and we plug in what we know. So since V is 60, we divide by the base, which is 12, to get our height. And so in this case, our height is 5 inches. Moving over here, we have the formula V equals 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. The 1/3 is always in that equation. So what we have to do is we have to get that b by itself. What we can do first is we can combine this 1/3 and the 9, and everything's being multiplied together. So we're doing, I'm going to do it off to the side, we're doing 1/3 times 9. We remember that if we want to multiply by a fraction, we have to make the second one a fraction. Top times top would give us 9. Bottom times bottom would give us 3, and 9 over 3 is the same as 3. So we get V equals 3 times B. And in this case, I can also plug in the given information that V equals 48. So then when I divide both sides by 3, b equals 16, and it's got to be feet squared because it's the area of that whole base. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one. On this one, we had to find the formula for the surface area of a cylinder. The formula that we need to use for this is surface area, S, equals 2 pi times r times h. So what we're going to do to get the h by itself is divide by 2 pi r. On the right side, you'll notice that everything cancels out with the exception of the h. So we get s divided by 2 pi r equals h. Now we can plug in what we know. So that would be s is 12 pi divided by 2 pi times r, which is 2. Down on the bottom, you can reduce that to 4 pi. So we have 12 pi over 4 pi. The pi's cancel out, and 12 over 4 gives us 3 for the height. Since we're dealing with height, that would be centimeters, 3 centimeters. So now we come over here, and we actually have a longer formula that we need to use in order to find the surface area of a rectangular prism. So we have the surface area equals 2 times the length times the width plus 2 times the width times the height plus 2 times the length times the height. It doesn't matter what order you present those in. So then what we have to do is we have to plug in what we know so that we can find the length. In this case, surface area is 108. 2 times L times W would be 2 times L, which we don't know, times W, which is 4, plus 2 times the width, which is 4, times the height, which is 3, plus 2 times the length, which is L, times the height, which is 3. Now I'm going to go ahead and reduce what I can. Since right here 2 times L times 4 is being combined together, I can write that as an 8L, because 2 times 4 gives me 8, and I still have that L, plus 2 times 4 times 3 would be 8 times 3, which is 24, plus 2 times L times 3 over here. I can combine the 2 times the 3 to get 6L. So now I can combine my like terms. I get 108 equals 14L plus 24. So now we're working towards getting that L by itself, so I'll subtract 24 from both sides. So I get 84 equaling 14L. So now I have to divide by 14 on both sides. And 84 divided by 14 gives us 6. So the length is 6, and I'm going to put the label meters. So now we're going to get to the lesson portion where we are rearranging formulas for whatever variable they tell us. So in this case, we want to solve for y. So we have 2y plus 5x equaling 6. Our goal is to get the y by itself. So right here is what we have to solve for. So we're first going to start pulling things away. I'm going to first get rid of this 5x by subtracting 5x from both sides. So I'm left with 2y over here, and we can't take x's from not x's, so we leave them separated. It would be 6 minus 5x. And then our last step to get the y by itself would be to divide both sides by 2. So our final answer would be y equals 6 minus 5x, all divided by 2. In the next problem, we're again solving for y, so we have negative 2x minus 3y equaling 6. Our goal is to get that y by itself. To do that, we're going to first have to add 2 x's to both sides, which leaves us with a negative 3y equaling, we cannot combine the 6 and the 2x, so I leave them separated with that addition sign, 6 plus 2x, and then we divide by negative 3 on both sides. So y equals 6 plus 2x, all divided by negative 3 would be my final answer. On the next one, the directions say for all 3 of these that we want to solve for y. So I'm going to separate them. On the first one, I'm first going to add x to both sides, which leaves me with 5y equaling 10 plus x. Then to get the y by itself, you've got to divide both sides by 5, so y equals 10 plus x, all divided by 5. On problem 2, to get my y by itself, the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 4 x's from both sides. So negative 4y equals 1 minus 4x. We divide both sides by negative 4, and we have our final answer. Y equals 1 minus 4x, all divided by negative 4. Number 3, to get the y by itself, it's over here, so the first thing we're going to undo is that 6x. That leaves us with 12 minus 6x equaling 3y. Last step would be to divide by 3. So we have 12 minus 6x all over 3 equaling y. Over here they want us to solve for the slant height L. So using this formula, we have S equals pi times r squared plus pi times r times L. So the first thing we want to do is we want to take away this pi r squared from both sides. So we're going to pull that away from that L. So we have S minus pi r squared equals pi times r times L. Last step would be, because all 3 of those are connected by multiplication, to undo them using division. So the slant height L equals S minus pi r squared, all divided by pi times r. Here again we're solving for slant height, so we have S equals x squared plus 2 times x times L. So I'm going to get rid of that x squared first because it's furthest away. So we have S minus x squared equals 2 times x times L. To get the L by itself, we would then have to divide both sides by 2x. So S minus x squared divided by 2x equals L. In some cases, they're going to have you solve for a different variable than y. So here, to get that b by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by h, which leaves me with a over h equaling b. On the next one, we want to solve for p. Everything's connected by multiplication, so we undo it using division. These cancel off, and we're left with p equals I divided by r times t. On the next one, we want to get that h by itself, so the first thing we're going to do is subtract 2 pi r squared from both sides, which leaves us with s minus 2 pi r squared equaling 2 pi r h. Divide both sides by 2 pi r because all of that's connected by multiplication. And our final answer is h equals s minus 2 pi r squared, all divided by 2 pi r. Now we're going to rewrite the formula for temperature. and we want to solve for f, so you'll notice that we've got 5/9 being multiplied by everything on the inside of the parentheses. To undo multiplying by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. So that cancels out on the right-hand side. You're left with 9/5 c equals f minus 32. So to get that f by itself, we're going to add 32 to both sides. And now we have rearranged our equation for c. 9/5 c plus 32 equals f. We're going to do the same thing in a different order. So now we're going to solve for c and see if we get the same answer. So first we'll subtract 32 from both sides, which leaves me with f minus 32 equaling 9/5 times c. So then the next thing we want to do is we want to undo this multiplying by a fraction, so I'm going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. And since I have to multiply both sides, I put the f minus 32 in parentheses because we have to do that portion first, which leaves us with 5/9 times f minus 32 equaling c. So now if we want to decide which shape has which of these two has the greater temperature, we have to choose one of the formulas in order to plug in and solve. I'm going to use the formula F equals 9/5 C plus 32. So I'm going to take the one where we know the degrees Celsius, and I'm going to plug it in and see what we get for Fahrenheit and see if it's comparable to the sun's temperature of 11,000 degrees. So in this case, F equals 9/5 times 30,000, because the degrees Celsius was 30,000, plus 32. So F equals, we have to do 9/5 times 30,000, which gives us 54,000, plus the 32. So we get F equals 54,032, which is greater than the sun. So the lightning has the higher temperature. So now it says which has a greater temperature, 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius. I like using the F equals 9/5 C plus 32 equation. For me, that's just easier. So I'm going to plug in the one where we have our C. So we have 9/5 times C, which is 200, plus 32, and that will give us what our F equals. So I'm going to quickly type that into my calculator just to verify. $360 plus 32 gives us 392 degrees Fahrenheit, so it looks like the 400 degrees would be greater. If you have any questions on this lesson, please email me at sullivana@milton.k12.wi.us.